morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Thursday. With the unpredictability of the ongoing war in Ukraine, economists expect inflation to average at 5% for the rest of 2022.
Senators of the 18th Congress end their regular session without ratifying the mega trade deal. That's RCEP.
PLDT rakes in 39 billion pesos from the first tranche of its tower sale.
And monthly credit card billings jumped by more than 30% to over 100 billion pesos in 2021. We begin our broadcast with inflation expected to average at 5% for the rest of the year.
Now, economists over at First Metro Investments Corporation and the University of Asia and the Pacific say inflation may become the biggest headwind to growth this year. In their latest market call report, FMIC and UANP say commodity prices may remain elevated due to the ongoing war in Ukraine, with crude prices staying above $100 a barrel. The consumer price index jumped to 4.9% in April, its highest level in more than 3 years. BSP Governor Ben Jokno earlier said inflation may have settled between 5 to 5.8% in May, well above the Bangko Central's target of 2 to 4% for 2022. Despite the impact of inflation and the constraints on government resources, FMIC and UANP expect growth to continue in the second quarter. However, they forecast that GDP will slow compared with the 8.3% expansion recorded in the first 3 months of the year.
The Senate deferred the ratification of the RCEP. That's after some senators voiced concerns over a lack of safeguards for the agriculture sector. Senators adjourned its last session on Wednesday without taking a vote on RCEP, which is the world's biggest trade agreement, representing 30% of global GDP. RCEP is a trade agreement involving Australia, China, Japan, South Korea, and New Zealand, as well as 10 ASEAN members. Now, aside from the Philippines, only 2 countries have yet to ratify the RCEP, and those are Indonesia and Myanmar. It will now be up to the 19th Congress to tackle the RCEP when the session opens in July. Earlier yesterday, DTI Assistant Secretary Alan Gepti told Business World Live that the country will miss a lot of opportunities if it fails to act on this trade agreement.
We have to remember that almost all sectors, business organizations, industry associations, and even foreign chambers are supportive of our participation in RCEP. And the only concern raised is the agri-concerns brought about for consideration by our senators. But if you will have to compare that to the huge benefits that we will realize from joining this agreement, I mean, the advantages are tremendous. So we're talking here of investment, services, intellectual property, competition, among others.
In other news, monthly credit card billings jumped by 34% to over 100 billion pesos in 2021. That's despite the moderate demand for credit cards in the second half of the year. With the resumption of business activities and easing of mobility restrictions, credit card receivables recorded a year-on-year growth of close to 5% last year. Notably, the BSP has decided to keep the ceilings on credit card transactions as consumers are still reeling from the impact of the pandemic. This means interest rates or finance charges on credit card transactions will remain steady at 2% per month or 24% annually. The monthly add-on charge on installment loans is likewise kept at 1%. Now to talk about where he thinks the credit card industry is heading, we have on the show Vincent Wong, President and CEO of Rcbc Bancard Services Corporation. Arnel, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jess. Good morning, Danny. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, like what we reported earlier, well, of course, there seems to be some level of growth here from last year. We still recorded slower credit card business, at least in the latter half of 2021. This is a number of customers make that shift to alternative modes of digital products. Is the credit card business under threat due to the growth of other digital products here?
I don't think so, Jess. I think what's happening really is as consumers are given more options, more convenient ways to pay. The pie, if I can call it that, the share of digital transactions or cashless transactions is increasing, but there continues to be growth in credit card transactions. In fact, just looking at the 2022 numbers, first quarter industry is up by about 11%. Among our own customers in Rcbc, in the first 5 months of the year, transactions are up by about 45% compared to same period last year. So not necessarily a threat, but consumers are expected to shift towards payment forms that give them an easy, convenient, and secure way to pay, as well as really driven by their need.
Okay, more to that point, I mean, even credit card companies, again, like what you mentioned, are also going digital here, but do you see that slowing down as well as restrictions ease?
We see continuous growth as restrictions ease. In fact, we're seeing growth across the board, across different types of spending categories. So what's really helping this growth is increased consumer confidence. There's a lot of pent-up demand that we're seeing among consumers. And when we look at where they're spending, growth is across different types. Primarily, people are buying more airline tickets now than they were last year. Purchases for clothing and apparel, as people are more out these days. Food and dining is up. Gas and fuel transactions are up. So again, really a lot of proof that there's more confidence in consumers to go out and about and spend. And again, that's also supported by low cases of COVID, higher vaccination rates, and increased mobility in the market.
Okay. Arnel, can you nuance this growth? You already mentioned transactions, but generally in terms of credit card usage, is this, like you mentioned, the people that already had credit cards that were keeping the spending and then revenge spending na now? Is this, new people finally getting credit cards, being more financially included, perhaps? Or are these people that are shifting from, cash payments, digital payments, towards having more credit payments?
Sure, Danny. I would say a lot of it is really coming from existing credit card holders already who've been there for the long time as part of the pandemic and are now more empowered to be consuming or spending because of the ease in restrictions and the improving economic outlook. The industry has booked and issued cards, but relatively speaking, when we talk about overall number of cards in the market, that's relatively flat, maybe about 1 to 2% growth year on year. So it's really coming from customers who continue to thrive under the existing situation. As you probably know, over the last 2 years as well, there's a segment of the market that's found it difficult to continue paying for their credit card debt. So by now, a lot of those customers would have either been managed out of the bank's portfolios. So we're really talking about consumers who can continue to pay and who have greater demand now that the economy is opening up.
Arnel, can we press you on that? What percentage of people have had trouble paying their credit card bills? And has that improved, gotten down because people hopefully are back to work, have employment already? Is that a very agile, position? That people pay right away once they do have income, and then people get, again, when they lose income, have trouble to pay?
Yeah. In 2020 and most likely first half of 2021, banks have had to go through a lot of programs, Danny, to help customers. So there's really a segment of the market, especially those from vulnerable sectors who've either lost their income, lost their jobs, or had their incomes reduced, who found it difficult to pay. And the industry generally has been very supportive. In addition to the relief programs that the government has mandated from the banks. So we've helped a lot of the customers restructure their obligations. When I look at the data, primarily non-performing loans within the credit cards businesses in the industry, this has already gone down. And what that means is customers now find it easier to pay for their credit card obligations. At the same time, customers who had difficulty before would now have a lot of them would now have found ways to pay for their obligations, working out some form of relief programs and arrangements with their banks. So generally, as the economy improves, what we find, as we do in our own business, is that the risk outlook also improves. And that is why we have increasing confidence to continue growing the number of credit card issuances, particularly this year, and continuing supporting our own credit card customers in their spending needs.
Arnel, let's zero in on Rcbc Banker this time. What's your growth trajectory for the year? And do you see demand at least increasing for the rest of 2022? And how is a BSP's decision to actually keep ceiling on credit card transactions going to impact your margins?
And raising rates.
Exactly, that too.
Yeah, we just first is really in terms of credit card issuances. We expect to see some growth. Again, that's a lot driven by improving outlook and our improving risk appetite, particularly for RCBC. So we expect cards issuances to be up by up to 10% year on year. The growth will be faster in terms of transaction volumes, again, given the easing of restrictions. So definitely there's more room for growth this year compared to last year. Now, with respect to the BSP keeping the interest rates capped at the 24% per annum, we're supportive of this, especially as we continue to support consumers with cheaper access to credit at this point. At this point, Jess, most banks would have already done the adjustments in terms of their business models in order for them to keep running the cards businesses for the long term. And in Rcbc Banker, that's precisely what we have done over the last 2 years. A lot of it has to do with making sure our processes and business services are as efficient as possible, accelerating our digital transformation journey within our own customer base in order to make sure we run an efficient business for the lower yields that we're seeing these days. With the rising interest rates, given the recent monetary policy decision, at the moment, we're assessing the impact to our business and we'll make certain adjustments as needed. But generally, we have enough room at the moment within our existing yields to take in that higher cost. And of course, the rates are capped. So we will manage it within the existing portfolio and probably among preferential rates that we offer to existing cards customers.
All right, very, very interesting updates there. Thank you so much. That was, of course, Vincent, Wong, President and CEO of Rcbc Banker.
Thanks, Danny and Jess.
Economists express optimism over strong factory activity that's despite manufacturing PMI dipping slightly in May. S&P Global said production and new orders grew at solid rates, although the pace of growth softened last month to 54.1 from 54.3 in April. The firm expressed optimism over the sector, noting that strong demand conditions resulted in firms increasing hiring activity since February. For ING Bank's Nikki Mapa, the increase in employment is also a good development and indicates an increase in business confidence. However, Union Bank's Carlo Asuncion warns that the Ukraine-Russia conflict and China's lockdowns will continue to impact the supply chain.
Now on to some breaking news. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will be taking his oath as the 17th President of the Philippines at the National Museum of Fine Arts. That is on June 30th. This was confirmed by the Office of President-elect Marcos in a press release. Formerly known as the Old Legislative Building, the National Museum of Fine Arts also served as the venue for the inauguration of former Presidents Manuel L. Quezon, Jose P. Laurel, and Manuel Rojas. Presidential Management Staff Secretary-designate Naida Angpin says preparations are now in full swing to ensure that the venue will be ready in time for the inauguration of President-elect Marcos.
Over at the Senate, it looks like re-elected Senator Mig Zubiri will be the next Senate President. That's after Senator Cynthia Villar decided to throw in the towel in the fight for the Senate leadership. Greg Gregorio with the details.
Senator Cynthia Villar has dropped out of the race for the Senate presidency after she reportedly floated the idea of a term-sharing arrangement with Senator Mig Zubiri.
Wala nang SP race. Hindi na kayo interesado? Hindi na.
Senator Bato de la Rosa earlier said Villar already secured 8 votes, but now that she is backing Senator Zubiri, these votes could likely shift to the incumbent Senate Majority Leader. In response, Zubiri thanked Villar for the support, and as early as now, Zubiri said they've already gone over how the Senate would look under his possible leadership. Senator-elect Loren Legarda will be the Senate pro tempore, while Senator Joel Villanueva will be the Majority Leader. Some incumbent senators will be retaining their committee chairmanship, while incoming senators have also been tasked to lead their own committees. Zubiri said President-elect Bongbong Marcos is asking the help of Congress on the next administration's legislative agenda. Marcos Jr. also wants to address corruption in various government agencies. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Pausing for a quick break, but coming right up after that, we'll check how our local bourse is moving this morning after the index fell by nearly 8% on Wednesday's trade.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
Anti-drug operation.
And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
All right, Dan, despite the index mounting more losses for a second day yesterday, some interesting deals have been pulled off. Tell us more.
Well, make that third day today, Jess, or possibly at least take a look at our opening first. That's down 0.5%. Again, below 6,700. Just can't get a break there. Only services and mining and oil holding on to the green. The rest quite deeply in the red, I do have to say. But as you mentioned, there are some exciting things going on. Let's kick off with Century Pacific. Tuna and sardines. Why not? They did rise yesterday, and you could see that in my 1 month chart here, a little bit down by 2%, but there was this peak earlier on. That as they finalized the acquisition of Ligo assets over in Zamboanga, and they said that will effectively increase their earnings. This purchase was paid in cash. Now, another one to be looking at is Prime Infra Holdings of Enrique Razon, which is of course not listed, but we do have ICTSI here. This, as they have mentioned, or Razon's group has given a statement that they will be acquiring a controlling stake in Dennis Uy's Malampaya, and that has kicked off. That will be, of course, subject to the consent of the parties involved. You've got the DOE, you've got the PNOC still having to sign off to that. Nevertheless, ICTSI jumping by 1 peso and 8 centavos, bucking the sell-off in the rest of the bourse. And we also have PLDT, Jess. They have completed the sale of 3,012 telco towers. That's out of the 5,970. That is a deal worth 77 billion pesos. They will be getting an additional completion for the other deals, closing expected by the fourth quarter. And just for more optimism, Jess, let's take a look at the airline companies. This, as they continue to see an uptrend in bookings, at least according to Cebu Pacific. They did mention that a lot of interest has been shown in the seat sales. Another one, AirAsia, they did mention that the adjustment on the fuel surcharges will help cushion the impact of this volatile global oil prices. But take note, Jess, for domestic flights, it will range from 200 to 769 pesos per passenger additional price. International flights can go up to 9,892 already in June. And the transport expert Rene Santiago says this might, not affect those that are in the higher income brackets. They will not postpone their flights, but it will definitely affect passenger demand, especially to the low to middle income. They might opt out. So something to watch out for here, the airline companies, and whether the consumption will remain and people will continue taking those flights despite the fuel surcharges.
The Information and Communications Department under President-elect Bongbong Marcos's administration will work to make the Philippines globally competitive. Speaking to 1PH, DICT Secretary nominee Ivan Uy said they are looking to build more digital infrastructure under the Marcos administration. He added that they also seek to halt child pornography and strengthen cybersecurity in the country. Uy also said that if chosen as secretary, he will push for SIM card registration and create a more secure free Wi-Fi scheme for the country.
The ICT sector is one of his flagship projects po. I believe that we share the common vision that it is one of the key areas where the Philippines can become very competitive in the world stage. At the same time, we need to build up our cybersecurity area and cybercrime prevention.
Meanwhile, in an interview with The Big Story, incoming Social Welfare Secretary Erwin Tulfo said he wants fast and reliable aid in times of calamities and disasters. Tulfo added that the late deliveries of food packs and relief goods is one of the problems faced by the department every time there's a typhoon. Tulfo also said that he welcomes constructive criticisms from the media and from vloggers to ensure that he does his job well.
Talk about DSWD, kailangan ng ayuda, kailangan prompt Kailangan doon talaga napupunta sa tamang mga tao. Pinuho kong banatan kunwari kung patamad-tamad at patulog-tulog ako at I will accept that criticisms. I encourage the media men and women, hindi lang po media men and women, pati yung may mga social media, yung mga bloggers natin, call my attention para maayos po yung trabaho.
All right, the real work beginning here, at least for the teams to transition from the Duterte administration to the Marcos administration.
All right, a lot to be watching out for, Jess, on a daily basis, how that's going to be shaping up.
And that, of course, is something we will be keeping tabs on. And that's a first look into the business day this Thursday, June 2, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.